John here with Ripewave Audio, and this is our first video where we will do an in-house review of the Sony Flagship AV Receiver, the STR-AZ7000ES. And a lot of you have asked for this video. We've done this full series where we've been looking at a lot of the popular AV receivers and processors under or around $5,000. And this fits that category. And Sony had been vacant from the market for a few years. They came out with this new range, and we're happy to bring this in because we heard a lot of good press around this, particularly with their 360 spatial sound mapping technology. We'll get into that further. I'd like to do first, as we always do, a comparison against its nearest peers from Yamaha, Marantz, and Onkyo. Now, I could have looked at sister brands such as Integra and Pioneer and Denon, but by looking at Marantz and Onkyo, I think you get a good feeling of how this compares against the Sony. So we're going to take that approach. Now, we did our first video on the new Sony ranges back in early February of this year. That video got a lot of views, and the 7000, this is over $3,000 for the AZ7000ES. Its nearest model, the AZ5000ES, is $1,000 less and pretty much is the same unit with less channels, a little smaller power supply, but the 7000 and the 5000 are very close. I know a lot of you wanted me to do the 5000, but since you're mainly just losing channels, I thought, why don't we just go with the Flagship and we can cover all the bases and capabilities that the Sony range has to offer. So it does start with, the 5000 ES, 12-channel unit. I will say that all of these, from the literature, we can't see that there is independent subwoofer output, but when they do their center channel work, I gotta believe there's some way to adjust the timings between the multi-center channels. So we'll get into that as well. Maybe there is multiple subwoofer outputs that are independently controlled, but we won't know until we get into the details and setting up, configuring it, and running it. And so this first pass where I'm giving you information is based off of what they have on their website and the manuals and what I've heard out there through other videos and channels. And we'll see how close that is to the reality that we experience when we actually get in and use it. So please, it's helpful to have the feedback. So if you know of some things that are different in reality from the literature, please include those, and hopefully we'll uncover those as we go through this series. So the 5000 ES, this was released earlier this year. 11 channels amplification, 130 watts into 8 ohms. This is what unit gives you. So 12 channels being 11.1 of processing. And the way they do these units is that front cover comes off. We'll see this when we unbox it, and it exposes all the buttons. Otherwise, you can conceal all those buttons so it has a nice clean look for display or in your rack. The comparison from the prior generation, we had the ZA. They just reversed the letters, and now it's AZ5000, and they've done the same thing with their Flagship. So this is the model down below, so just over $2,000 for that. But when you get to this model, the 7000 ES, $3,300 as originally advertised. This is a 13.1 channel, so you get 2 more channels of processing, but you also get 2 more channels of amplification for 13 channels at 150 watts per channel. So more output, more channels on this unit. It's heavier, it's more expensive. You'll pay at least $1,000 more in most cases. But the way it looks is very similar. Same cosmetic design on the front, same removable cover exposing the buttons. And here it is. And what was a big addition to the Sony ranges for this new generation is the addition of wireless capabilities, both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, before they opted in for a 4-port switch on the back of their receivers, and that is gone now. So we can see it against the whole range here. Also included in this is the AN1000, the AZ1000ES, which is the first model in the elevated standard part of their range, the 3000ES, and the ones that we've mentioned, the 5000 and the 7000ES. And you can see how that takes you from $900 all the way up to $3,300 in this range. And of course, the models that it displaced with this new series. Looking inside these units, we can see that they have fans in it. We will see if we can hear those fans when they run. Of course, the worst example we've had to date was the Anthem products. Those were terribly loud and distracting from our listening. In some cases where we see receivers with fans, they don't even come on. They're only there as if this heats up enough. And so we'll see how distracting these fans are. There's 2 of them lying on there. Here with the 5000 ES, you can see this chassis and the cooling fins that they have in here, the HDMI board, and the power supply. And when you move up to the 7000, you can see that power supply is a little more robust, but some of the other components are shared. Now, for the comparison against the other manufacturers, Yamaha, Marantz, and Onkyo, we have our traditional tables out here. The 7000 Flagship being a 13.1 channel, 14 channels of processing, gives you a lot of flexibility on speaker layouts, but we believe only to be a single subwoofer output, although there's 2 physically on the back of the unit. Again, we'll see if we can really independently control those. The manual is saying no to me. But when you compare it to something like the Marantz, we have 4 subwoofer outputs. Now that's 15 channels processing, but keep in mind that you've got all those extra subwoofers, so there's really less flexibility on the layouts. For example, Marantz, Onkyo, and Yamaha don't allow for front wide channels, but this new Sony 7000 does. That's something you don't even get with the 5000 ES Sony, is those front wide channels, and we're showing you with that extra center channel, which is an option depending on how you want to do your layouts, and it does have that option for the second center channel, which we'll get into in more detail in a bit here. Now the 7000 has the option for 3 rows of heights, but you're making the trade-off between, am I going to do front wides, I'm going to do a 3rd row of heights, am I going to do a second center channel, and whether or not you're going to be doing rear surrounds. So these are choices you have to make on the layout, but it gives you flexibility to do a 7.1.6 or a 9.1.4 configuration. Now the 5000 ES is really down to just a 7.1.4, and we can see through all the other competing products that they don't give you the front wides and they don't give you the 3rd row of height channels. So if you want to do those speaker layouts, this may be the product for you. Now, as far as decoding capabilities, they all support Dolby Atmos. They all support DTS:X, but these Sonys don't support Aural 3D. None of them support DTS:X Pro in what we've listed here. Now, we anticipate the new Denon AVR X6800H in its capability of doing DTS:X Pro. But as far as in recent releases, there's not much in this price range that will do that. So as we look through this, if you want Aural 3D, you can get it from the Yamaha products, the A6A and the A8A. You can get it from the Marantz Cinema 40 and the Cinema 50. And you can get it from the Onkyo TX-RZ70. Now, when they first released that model, it didn't have that capability, but with the September firmware release, it's added it in to just the RZ70 model from Onkyo and the other flagships from Pioneer and Integra as well. but the RZ50 doesn't have Aural 3D capability. So it does have the lowest price of this, but you are giving up Aural 3D, but is definitely lacking in the Sony models that capability. Now, there is no headphone jack on this unit, as you get a 1/4-inch headphone jack on all the others. And the other weird thing that Sony is doing is they've taken away the AM radio. Okay, many of us audio enthusiasts don't use AM radio that often, but can it really be that expensive and to add in an AM radio at this day and age? All the other products offer it. So that is a bit odd. There is a removable IEC power cord, and the power is chosen depending on which country you're buying this from, where your destination is. So let's talk about the extra capabilities of trying to center it if you have a normal television like we do versus a projector screen with an acoustically transparent screen where you can put the center channel right behind the screen. How do you try to balance that center channel to where it's perceived as coming from the television? Now, they had this capability initially with center lift using height speakers mounted on the wall, and they balance it that way. Now they're allowing it, and I believe it only works with Bravia XR televisions, where you can use the speakers in the television to balance it out. It just sends the high frequencies out the television. The center channel speaker is doing the main lifting, but enough comes through the television to kind of lift that up and acoustically sync it. The other way that they're doing this is with 2 center channels, one mounted below and one above the television, and to perceive that difference there. There's also a capability with the wireless edition. They have their own subwoofers and rear speakers. So if you don't want to run wires all around your living room and you want to use these units, this is an option. I also noted the lack of AM radio, but even the connectors, they've seemed to cheapen on the back of this. Some of the lower models, they don't even give you a coaxial connection for the FM radio. Now, thankfully, on these premium models, the 7000 ES and the 5000 ES, as well as the 3000, you do get that, but you don't have the AM radio as you did in prior models from Sony. So definitely a cheapening there. Now, these units do also have IMAX Enhance. We see that across the board, but not from Yamaha. I don't see any IMAX Enhance from them. Dolby Vision across the board. The calibration for the Sony products is their own proprietary technology they call D.C.A.C 9. And this isn't, they're not alone. Yamaha has their YPOW. But a lot of companies have moved to direct, which is Marantz and Onkyo, have that option. Now, Onkyo includes it for free, whereas Marantz, you have to pay for direct, otherwise you're using Odyssey. But it's nice when you can use room correction right out of the box, which most have some sort of option there. I don't believe they have anything specific for bass control, but let's see how well it does. Bass control is available on the Onkyo Flagship for either $350 for a single or $500 for multi-sub. Now, Onkyo is the only brand that supports THX certification. They have that on both models, whereas the bass control is only on their Flagship. Now, the big buzz is around their 360 spatial sound mapping. So if you can't put your speakers in the ideal positions, or you're lacking a speaker, it tries to fill in, and it also tries to, if you have an object moving through space, it tries to determine what is the best blend of speakers to perceive that smooth motion path for the object. So yeah, they have these. They also have their 360 reality audio. The name is very similar, but it's a different technology. The 360 reality audio is something that gets encoded in source material, similar to what Dolby Atmos does what you're seeing on streaming service, although Sony doesn't like to compare itself to Dolby in this regards. But in reality, it is very similar to an encoding there. And it seems like Tidal is the main streaming service that offers this content, although I believe there's others. For the digital to audio conversion, we see Sony using ESS chips, just as with Yamaha and Onkyo. This 7000 is using an ES9038 Pro chip, two of those, whereas the 5000 uses an ES9026 Pro chip. Now, the Yamaha uses a 9028. The Onkyo RZ70 uses a 9026 Pro, as well as the Yamaha RX-A6A. Now, on paper, the 7000 has the best specs as far as the DAC, 132 decibel signal to noise, minus 122 decibels THD plus N, and the PCM decoding of 24,768 kilohertz and DSD at 256 sounds great. But when they publish the signal to noise, they talk about it 110 decibels in direct mode and 100 decibels in standard mode. Versus when we see something published, let's say by Onkyo at 107 dBs for the RZ70 and 106 dB for the RZ50, we wonder if that DAC really translates down to what you actually hear. But we will do that A-B comparison for what we can with the Marantz Cinema 50 and our Emotiva RMC1 that we have in-house, and see where it fits in with the spectrum. Now, as of yet, the Yamaha had some of the best sound characteristics of any of the processors and receivers that we've listened to date, and we've listened to quite a few of them. So yes, and it will do DSD, but DSD 64, which I find a little surprising when DSD is really Sony's invention there with the Super Audio CD, SACDs, why they weren't doing more, but maybe they feel that's all that's necessary. Now, Sony, like a lot of other manufacturers, are unable to really give you a clue of if that's native DSD all the way through the process, or are they converting at some point to PCM so they can do some other things. So again, it will come down to our listening to see how well that implementation is. Sony has other features that are built into this, and they promote them on their website, and they redid some of the digital sections, etc. As far as the inputs and the outputs, 6 in, 2 out on the HDMI, and this is all 2.1 stuff. Not bad, but some of these other products give you a channel or more of inputs than the Sony does. For example, the Yamaha does 7 in, 3 out on the HDMI, which is best in class for anything that we've seen to do 7 in, 3 out. But this is 6 in, 2 out for both models. The coax and the optical digital inputs, 1 on the coax, 2 on the optical. There's no AES EBU. There's no multi-channel input, but we do have multi-channel output for all the channels. It does have 13.2, and it does have that second center channel as well on that. And of course, the .2 is, we believe, wired in parallel, but we're going to be checking on that. But no balanced inputs or outputs on this unit. There are 4 analog RCA ins. There are 2 zone outputs. You do get some legacy inputs for video, but you only get that for composite video, 2 in, 2 out, no component video, and no turntable phono input on this unit. So all these others from Yamaha, Marantz, Onkyo all have moving magnet phono capabilities built into it. So that's a convenience item, although we do prefer using external phono preamp, and those 4 inputs do have you covered there. So that is on the I/O. Of course, the 5000 has 2 less on the pre-outs as natural because it's processing 2 channels less. Looking deeper into HDMI, we see that of the 6 inputs, only 4 of them are 8K, but both outputs are 8K. Of course, we're getting the high frame rate as you would expect from an 8K receiver, variable refresh rate, auto low latency mode, but they do not have quick media switching or QFT. That is a feature that they haven't implemented. And as they've said, is if one unit doesn't have that feature in the chain, you go to least common denominator. So if you want those features and you have a Sony receiver, then you better to do direct video from the source, like your game machine, PlayStation 5, direct to the TV to get use of those features. But it has hybrid log gamma. It does have Dolby Vision and IMAX Enhance, not HDR10 Plus on the Sony units. And the copy protection is HDCP 2.3. And you can see the rest of this chart here. Not all the units support all the different HDMI 2.1 features. This is where Onkyo seems to check all the boxes where we're not getting clear indication from the other manufacturers. On the Ethernet side, all these units have Ethernet. They all have Wi-Fi. They all have Bluetooth in and Bluetooth out if you have a pair of headphones. Of course, Bluetooth is low quality, but it is a nice convenient item. Voice control, it does support the Google voice control, but not the others. So if you're looking for voice control, some of the other receivers may be a better choice. Lots of protocol support, whether that's infrared, Ethernet, serial through the DB9 connection, 3 output triggers. So that is good to see, but it's just something like the Marantz Cinema 50 only has 1, and some of the other lower end models you have to pay over $3,000, it seems, to get more than 1 output trigger, at least on this set of products. And the integration, it seems to check a lot of boxes. In fact, I ran out of room at the bottom here. They support a few more on the other category. So Sony really is focusing on the integration market to integrate with a lot of third-party systems. So that is nice to see. Support for AirPlay, Chromecast. They added Sonos with the addition of wireless. So that is convenient if you have those Sonos ecosystems throughout your home. They do have that capability. It's Roon ready. It has Spotify, and that's all good. Now, it doesn't have DTS Play-Fi. That you only see on Onkyo in this set. And of course, Yamaha and Marantz have their own ecosystems with MusicCast and Hios. They're not claiming direct support for any of the streaming services, but I think they feel that through those other integrations and connections through AirPlay, that's where you get that to come through. I prefer using something like my Apple TV, or you could have a dedicated music streaming type of device that would be a higher quality. That would probably be preferred route there, but not built in, and I don't see that as a big loss, but you do get that capability built into Yamaha, Marantz, and Onkyo. As far as the remote, and we haven't taken this out yet, but this seems to be a pretty basic remote. Now, Sony is notorious for not in recent days not putting much into their remotes. I don't think it's backlit. We'll see. We had that circumstance with the Yamaha remote. It didn't have a backlight button, but it's motion sensitive. So when you pick up the Yamaha remote, it does light up. So we'll see if this has the motion sensors on as to light it up. Otherwise, I don't think it does. As far as weight, this is coming in second heaviest of this grouping. The only one that's heavier is the Onkyo TX-RZ70. That's 48.5 pounds. This is 48 pounds, 22 kilograms for the Onkyo, 21.8 kilograms for this Sony. Now the 5000 comes in a little lighter at 42 pounds 6 ounces, or 19.2 kilograms. They use around 500 watts, a little more for this unit at 540, and the standby power is 0.5 watts. Now, compared to the Onkyo, which is a little heavier. The Onkyo uses almost twice as much power at 1095 watts, but on standby it goes down to 0.1. Now, a little caveat on the standbys, it all depends too on how you set this up for standby, whether you have the wireless on standby or not, and that will use a little more power. But usually under a watt of standby power, no matter how you have this configured for standby. This unit is made in Malaysia and carries a 5-year warranty. Now, a little note about warranty. The ES Sony Blu-ray player I had, is an ES product. And when I got it within a week, the optical connector physically broke off. I'm not rough with this. Sony would only say that this was misuse of the product and would not honor the warranty. Now, thankfully, my retailer took it back. But while these things have a 5-year warranty, I'm a little cautious about Sony honoring those warranty for physical items. Now, for other things, we'll see, right? But I had that issue. Yamaha tries to match the 5-year. They have this promo where they're doing a 2-year extension. I don't know how long that's going to last. Marantz with the Cinema 40 is 5 years, but the Cinema 50 is only 3 years. And instead of being made in Japan like the Cinema 40, the 50 is made in Vietnam. So, that gives you a sense of this. This is, as far as height, 7.8 inches, 194 millimeters, which is the same as the 5000. All the dimensions are the same with the 5000. This is close to being the tallest, but again, the Onkyo is a little slightly taller. The depth is 17.4, 440 millimeters, which is similar to the Marantz Cinema 40. The Onkyo is at least an inch deeper, and the width is a standard 17 inches, 430 millimeters. So that sums up the overview in comparison against Onkyo, Marantz, and Yamaha. And so we got a glimpse of what this can be based on how they advertise the unit on their website, in their literature. Now we're going to start taking this out, getting to see it for ourselves, and then in subsequent videos, do a setup, do the calibration, and then compare the sound. We usually do this over 3 videos, one for the setup, one for the calibration, and one for the sound comparison. But we'll get through this next few weeks, and you'll have a good sense of what we think about the Sony. So let's open this up and see what this looks like. The last time I had a Sony do this capacity was my Sony TAE9000ES. That was from 1998. I used that for over 20 years. It served me very well. It was built very well and sounded very good, particularly for its generation. And so we're going to see how close this comes to, my favorable opinion of Sony when I bought that. Have they come back in the same way where I would have a similar emotion about it? So the first thing in here is a little box. So in this box, we have the IEC power cord. This is a 2-prong unit. We have the antennas for the radio. We have a plastic stand with a microphone mount on it. So I believe this will aid you with your calibration. We've got another plastic part that goes with the calibration. And my understanding on the calibration is you don't need a separate computer. This is all run directly from the unit. And a third piece that makes up the microphone calibration stand. Okay, we have batteries on this end of the box. And here is the remote. So none of the buttons say backlight, but I'll put the batteries in, so this will be ready to go. There is backlight on here. When you push the keys, some do light up, but I'm not getting any. That's only for the zone selection buttons, but there isn't lights on the back of each one of these. As we use this, I may have further notation on that. So what we've got here is a variety of lit paper, license agreement, startup guide, and a printed manual. Thank you, Sony. Not many companies do a printed manual. And there is a free trial for the music service for the 360 reality audio. I may have to try that with an access code number. And we've got this long thing box. I can't imagine what's in there. One would almost think it's a keyboard. These are all wrapped in cloth-like paper. This is the cover for the front of the unit that hides the buttons. And that's the accessory box. Now let's take this out. There are foam corners. We'll take each of the foam corners out. An extra cardboard cover. And then the unit itself. So that was quite heavy. Let's turn this around so it faces front. This is wrapped in a very waxy-like foam. There is an attention paper on here that gives some warning about the correct wiring to the amplifiers. And here I thought I was turning it around to face front, but it's facing back to begin with. It's pre-mounted with its antenna for wireless and Bluetooth. You can see here's the digital inputs in, your triggers, out, remote in and out, RS-232 connections, Ethernet, and here is your HDMI, and your inputs, and your outputs to the zones, and your pre-out section, and then here is your composite video, and then all your speaker terminals. Not the most elegant speaker terminals that I've seen, but okay. Some of these are twisted out already, which is kind of odd, why they would have been not all screwed in. But that's the back. We can see the IEC power cord there. Let's turn it around. And while I do that, you can see this vented on the top. And then here is this unit. Very traditional Sony style. Your display on the top here and all your buttons. I imagine a lot of this replicates what's on the remote. And then, should you choose, this must fit in here somehow. Oh, it's magnetic. It kind of just snaps into place. And there it is all put together. Let's put some power on this and see what it looks like, how it lights up before we close off. And we'll take this cover off. We see now a power indicator here and a please wait. And this is a dot matrix display. And we can see while we're waiting here that they have each one of these inputs labeled with suggested use. Game, media box, BD, DVD, satellite, cable TV, video, aux, TV, super audio CD or CD, and then the last button, others, in case something else comes your way. We'll do a measurement on how long this is starting up, compare it to what we've measured for some other products, getting a feel for the volume knob. I don't feel any rubbing here. I do feel, there's some tension, which is good. It gives it, kind of makes it feel smooth, but not the most robust one. I've used the one on my Sony STR-AZ7000ES. I haven't seen much better than that. So this has done its full startup and then it shuts down. So I'm going to hit the power button. and I can hear the relays click in, and now you can see some of the displays. And as we go through this in the following weeks, you'll see how this display works. If they have an on-screen display, if they have a web interface, I believe they have all three, and we'll talk you through this. So what are your thoughts so far? Are you excited about this Sony STR-AZ7000ES? How do you think it's going to fare against the other models we have already reviewed? It is a handsome unit, and I'm hoping that it will perform well sonically, and the Sony calibration software, which I know nothing about at this point, how well is that going to do? Your feedback would be really appreciated. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And if you want to take your involvement to the next level, we have our Patreon channel at www.patreon.com/Ripewave. You can always hit that one-time thanks button if you want to donate. And it doesn't cost you anything to hit that bell notification so you're notified when the next video is posted. Until then, keep evolving your audio experience.